The problem is that we keep putting this issue onto the state and saying prioritize, which is true, they should, and they have. I believe that there has been more and more effort in the recent past, especially with the government prioritizing women's issues and women's welfare. I think we have now sort of committed to a national action plan, that the UNDP is also a part of, and it's published that there are certain commitments that the government has made in various interventions. But I think still, in looking at how do we make women feel safe, we also have to prioritize the intersectionality of this issue, because women are not a homogeneous group. So whilst we have made various international commitments and ratified so many different things, and we have so many different policies and sort of the legal frameworks in Sri Lanka that do support SGBV intervention, we still haven't really looked at focusing on how do we change social behavior towards strengthening the implementation of these policies. So I think the government does need to prioritize on education to community. Whilst they're working on legal and policy frameworks, there is a huge need for these conversations, this understanding of the frameworks and the system to be taken out of the academic and Colombo circles. So I think in terms of community outreach, in terms of state-sponsored nationwide education needs to happen, so that every single woman out there knows what she can access in the country. And of course, then there are laws like, marital rape. The fact that marital rape is still not a crime in Sri Lanka in itself is a crime. So I think that should be something that I would love for the government to prioritize and to do public education campaigning around it, because that is a huge part of SGBV that we continuously ignore. Because when we talk about sexual and gender-based violence, we just we have this tendency to box it into either some sort of like a rape on the street situation or domestic violence, but we don't think about the fact that marital rape is very much part and parcel of this issue, and it's very common, and it's also something that women need to understand is wrong. So yeah, I would like that to be something that is definitely prioritized. Marital rape is definitely something I would like to see being criminalized, and in terms of legal reforms, I think I am not Muslim, but I think the MMDA is something that has been discussed very vocally by Sri Lankan Muslim women, and it is part and parcel of gender-based violence, where their right to sign their marriage contract has not been given to them yet. I think that is also something that we can consider a violation, that in terms of legal frameworks that the government can look at. I find it difficult to understand why domestic violence is not one of the reasons that a woman can ask for a divorce legally, because there are four things that you can sort of cite as your reasons or your justifications for a divorce in the Sri Lankan Marriage Act, but domestic violence doesn't seem to be one of them. So again, it would be good if the marriage laws also are reformed in a way that understands that that is a humongous pervasive issue in this country, and sort of help a woman to sort of seek redress in an easier way. That's something that I can see. And of course, abortion rights. Again, legalizing abortion in the country needs to happen. We assume that abortion is attempted or carried out by teenage pregnancies. We assume it's women who, have no regard for life, or, who don't think ahead and don't protect themselves and all of that. We like to sort of victim blame, but statistics have shown that 90% of abortions happen by women who are married, in the country, and at the moment they're unsafe abortions because abortion is illegal, and just sort of criminalizing something doesn't mean that it won't happen. Banning abortion doesn't mean that abortion won't happen, because 90% of abortions are carried out on married women. Often these women, it's a result of abject poverty, because they're women who have 2 to 3 children and cannot afford to be pregnant again. And the fact of the matter is that we have this other statistic, which is that 13% of maternal deaths in Sri Lanka, as per the last research that was carried out, 13% of maternal deaths is due to abortion. So that is a problem. It is affecting our women. She does have a right to her choice. It is her body, and I don't think any government out there should have a say on what a woman's rights to choose are. So I do think that abortion rights is something that is very important to bring into Sri Lanka. Yeah, it's a difficult one to talk about, because a lot of these are very sensitive, especially with the public, and sort of we have romanticized, glorified, glamorized the security forces in the past, that they are sometimes beyond reproach and they do enjoy a certain impunity. So I think it is important for us to break those barriers, because you are talking about the lives of women. I have heard stories from people who are from organizations that are working in these spaces. There are stories where there are villages that are set up for ex-security forces, ex-military men who have gone through war, who have suffered intense PTSD, post-traumatic distress disorders, who have not been given proper mental health support, who are unhealed, and they are put in a village with their families, and these are men who are going through a lot of emotional trauma and are taking out their pain and distress on the women in their lives. And when you put an entire community of these men together in one space, without having support systems and infrastructure for the women to access safety, it becomes a huge problem. We also have issues with dealing with the past, where there are documented evidence of SGBV happening in conflict zones, in contexts where we have been sweeping it under the rug. And I think that needs to stop. We need to stop making excuses for the perpetration of sexual and gender-based violence, irrespective of in what context it happened or by whom it happened. It should not happen. So I do think that there needs to be far greater strengthening of the interventions and implementation of the law, which means investing heavily in training the right personnel, training the legal support that is required, training social advocates and community leaders to take charge of this, so that there is a better and more robust system around the woman to protect her. I'd also say that right now, if you look at some of the organizations that have been doing some incredible work in Sri Lanka in terms of intervening with the SGBV, like Women in Need, like certain shelters, women's shelters and foundations, they have been largely surviving on donation and funding based, work. And a lot of this, a big slice of this has been coming from USAID. And what has happened, we all know, is that a lot of this funding has been cut. And we have organizations like Women in Need, who are pretty much the only established state collaborative mechanism out there as a safety for women, safety intervention for women. They have had to let go of 50% of their staff. They are under-resourced. A lot of their facilities are now struggling, and that means that the women are suffering as a result. So we do need to strengthen them, and we do need to have local state-sponsored intervention to invest and make sure that these services are sustainable. Things like even in the legal system, when it comes to maybe camera, what do you call it, like when it comes to hearing cases for very sensitive and high risk situations, that a victim survivor should be able to give her testimony on camera and not have to come to courts, because you don't know what kind of situation she's in, what kind of risk she's under, what kind of physical distress there is going on. So there is a huge thing in that entire process, that entire value chain needs to be relooked at, to be survivor friendly and put the survivor first and go at it from a human rights approach, because a lot of the time there's a lot of re-traumatization that's happening and re-victimization that happens at every step of intervention currently in Sri Lanka, whether it's from psychosocial services to the legal services to the law enforcement services. There is a big reason why women don't report as much as they should. They don't report it because they feel like they're not safe to those who should be keeping them safe. So I do think that is another thing that the government should look at strengthening and investing on, and making sure that these are sustainable solutions that we have for Sri Lanka.